You and I have lived through the exact same data engineering nightmare. You start a first project, the deadlines are incredibly tight, so you just dump absolutely everything into one giant, flat storage structure. You transform that data wherever it happens to land, and you just assume whoever is downstream will somehow figure out what they can actually trust. Honestly, it works fine for about a month. Then, a schema changes upstream without warning, bad data slips through undetected, and 6 months down the line, absolutely nobody across the entire company agrees on which version of revenue is correct.
Look, you do not fix that chaos by writing more documentation. Let's be brutally honest. Those internal wiki pages are outdated the second you hit publish, and no one reads them anyway. You fix this chaos by enforcing strict contracts at every single stage of your data's lifecycle. That is why the Medallion Architecture isn't just some optional, nice-to-have conceptual framework. It's an absolute necessity if you want a reliable pipeline that actually lets you sleep at night. It forces you to stop guessing and start guaranteeing exactly what state your data is in at any given moment.
We're building a literal 3-tier pipeline here, moving strictly from left to right: bronze, silver, and gold. Think of these as ironclad contracts. You don't blend them together, you don't blur the lines just because you're in a hurry, and you definitely don't skip a step. Bronze, silver, and gold each have exactly one uncompromising job to do. If you respect those boundaries and treat them as immutable laws rather than mere suggestions, your pipeline becomes virtually bulletproof. First up is bronze. This layer is raw, unfiltered, and completely unchanged from the source. I always tell engineers this: if the source system sends you absolute garbage, your bronze layer needs to store that exact same garbage on purpose. You do not filter it, you don't clean it up, and you certainly don't apply any business logic here. Keeping this raw, untainted state is the only way you guarantee you can replay history from scratch when your transformation logic inevitably changes next year or when a massive bug is found in production. Without this raw state preserved exactly as it arrived, that history is gone forever.
Now, since you aren't touching the data itself, the only thing you are allowed to add to your raw bronze tables is metadata. That's it. You just need to know the basic facts of the transaction. You add an arrival timestamp so you know exactly when it hit your system and can establish a concrete timeline. You add a source system ID so you know exactly who to blame when the upstream schema suddenly breaks. And you add a pipeline run ID so you can trace the exact execution that brought the data in. Nothing else happens here. Once you move to the silver layer, the rules change entirely. This is strictly where your data quality work happens. We're talking about deduplication, null handling, typecasting, and range validation. But here is the critical distinction you have to maintain at all costs. This layer remains entirely domain neutral. What does that mean? It means silver doesn't care about the marketing department's new sales goals, and it doesn't care about how the finance team calculates margins. It only cares about structural integrity. Put simply, silver doesn't know what a VIP customer means, and it absolutely shouldn't try to figure it out. It just knows that a customer record is clean, properly formatted, free of duplicates, and now fully trustworthy. You are dealing exclusively in trust, structure, and validation at this stage. It must be completely separated from how the business defines its metrics. Finally, you reach the gold layer. This is the ultimate destination where your actual business logic lives. This is where you bring in those specific domain definitions. This is where you build out your star schemas, calculate those complex KPIs, perform your dimensional modeling, and structure the tables that your Power BI reports will directly query. Gold is shaped exactly for the business, making it as easy as possible for business analysts to read the data without needing a PhD in data engineering.
And here is a harsh truth about gold that almost nobody enforces correctly. Gold gets written by pipelines only. Business analysts get read access, and they never ever get write access. The exact moment you let a business analyst hand-edit a gold table to fix a quick reporting error or adjust a missing decimal, you have destroyed your lineage. You'll never be able to trace or explain a wrong number again, the audit trail is instantly broken, and the entire fallout from that reporting disaster will be entirely on you.
So, you have the core concepts locked in, but before you touch a single piece of tooling, you have to make the major architectural decision that dictates your entire security posture from day one: selecting your workspace pattern. How many workspaces do you actually need to build this right? Microsoft gives us 3 specific box diagram patterns for this. First, the single workspace with 3 lakehouses. This is fine for a 5-person team or a quick proof of concept, but it lacks serious boundaries. Second is the highly recommended 3 workspace pattern. Here you have one distinct workspace per layer.
This lets the ingestion team write to bronze, the core data engineering team write to silver, and analysts get read-only access strictly on gold. And third, the enterprise data warehouse pattern. In this setup, bronze and silver are lakehouses, but gold is a full data warehouse using T-SQL, which is aimed at mature teams, where both Power BI and SQL are the heavy consumption layers. I need to warn you right now about the single most common mistake I see in the field. It's a complete nightmare. A startup picks that simple, single workspace pattern because it's incredibly easy to set up on a Friday afternoon. Then, over a year, they scale up from 3 engineers to 15. They hire a bunch of analysts, and nobody ever remembers to migrate the access model. That is the access drift trap. Suddenly, overnight, every single junior analyst on your growing team technically has write access to your raw, highly sensitive bronze data, and you're one bad click away from a catastrophic deletion.
The rule of thumb here is simple but absolutely crucial. Build for the governance you will need in 12 months, not the governance you happen to need today. If you suspect your data team is going to grow even slightly, start with the strict 3-workspace pattern from day one. It absolutely saves you from catastrophic access drift down the road. Now, you might be wondering if you're going to be duplicating data everywhere. Moving data between these isolated layers does not mean physically copying massive files across your storage. You use OneLake shortcuts. These act as logical references under the hood, allowing your silver workspace to read bronze's actual storage location instantly. You get the strict security boundaries of isolated workspaces, but with 0 data duplication and 0 sync delay because nothing is actually moving.
The actual mechanics of building the transformations inside those layers shifted massively recently. If you look at the timeline of 2026 updates, Materialized Lake Views completely changed the game. Before this, we were maintaining thousands of lines of fragile, handwritten PySpark pipeline code that would fail at 2 a.m. because of some complex dependency chain. Now, you define silver and gold transformations entirely as declarative SQL statements. The engine automatically figures out the dependency order and handles the refresh schedule for you. Better yet, with the June 2026 update, those Materialized Lake Views now fully span cross-workspace boundaries. This is massive for your daily life as an engineer. It means you can deploy that highly recommended strict 3-workspace governance pattern without having to sacrifice the simplicity and power of declarative views. You get maximum security and minimum pipeline code, which translates directly to fewer late-night debugging sessions and 0 complex orchestration pipelines just to move data between security boundaries. But listen, even with the absolute right architecture, bad habits will sink your pipeline. These aren't just theoretical issues, these are the exact production failures that will ruin your weekends and absolutely destroy trust in your data engineering team if you aren't constantly vigilant. I see these 3 fatal errors constantly in the field. First, putting business logic in bronze. The exact second you filter rows, drop columns, or rename fields during your initial ingestion, you destroy your one true replay source. If you make a mistake there, you can never get that original data back. Second, skipping data quality roles in silver because you're in a rush to deliver a report. That shortcut always, without fail, turns into a 3-month cleanup project the minute the business users notice the numbers are wrong and lose faith in the dashboard. And third, building your gold layer as just a second, slightly cleaner copy of silver, completely ignoring the business needs. Seriously, if your gold layer isn't heavily pre-aggregated, meaning you've already done the heavy mathematical lifting and grouped the data before it hits the report, and strictly shaped for the business, you are doing it wrong. When gold just acts as a copied silver layer of raw transactions, Power BI is forced to do all that heavy compute at query time instead. You will completely ruin your direct lake performance. The engine will choke and your users will complain about slow dashboards all day long. The full written guide on the site has the exact tool selection table for every single layer, breaking down precisely when to use pipelines versus mirroring versus event stream for your bronze ingestion, and Spark Notebooks versus Dataflow Gen 2 for your silver transformations. It also includes the complete CI/CD setup mapped across all 3 of these layers, and the full FAQ, mapping this exact architecture directly to the DP700 exam, which is all linked in the description below. And if you want to see exactly how a broken bronze layer CSV import actually breaks a pipeline in practice, I've got a short on the channel walking through a real one, worth watching right after this.